All right, let's move on and talk about leaving the forest. What year did your family?
We moved out in 1936.
Okay.
The Barclay Brannigan hauled all the buildings up, and the cattle we drove them with horses. We had two neighbor boys that were good with horses, and we started the cattle up and heard them just. Dad took the lead, and they kind of followed him, and when we got up to where we live now, me and my brother had to herd the cows for the first month or so because he didn't have any fences. So I remember that. I remember the neighbor saying, "Aren't you afraid those boys are going to drown in those burnout holes?" Because the land where we moved to had been burnt over, and there were some places where it had been peat and it burnt out holes. Okay. And it was full of water.
Yeah. How long a distance are we talking from your homestead in the forest to where you are now, or to where you moved to in American Township?
Gee, I suppose about 15, 20 miles.
I was going to say, that's a pretty good jaunt to drive cattle.
Yeah.
How about the other livestock? Sheep, pigs, chickens?
Barclay Brannigan hauled them in his truck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And how old were you at that time when you left the forest?
I left at 9 years old.
You were 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. What do you remember about the move? What else do you remember? You talked about the moving the cattle. I assume it was kind of a long move, household goods. And did you have was there a cabin already built or where you were moving to? Or
no, Dad and the cattle were moved up before the house was, so my mother was still down in the forest for most of that summer, and then when the house was moved, she moved with the house. And in the meantime, Dad had built dug a basement, built a basement, so he had the basement ready to set the house on.
Okay. Do you remember the house move? How they moved it?
Yeah, it was moved with timbers and a truck and yeah. The house had a sun porch on it that was taken off, so the house wasn't that big. It wasn't. Another thing that I remember, they moved the garage, and there was a swallow that had a nest in the garage, and she followed that garage all the way up to where
Is that right? That's kind of neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about the other builds? So the house was moved up. Where is it today?
I'm living in it today.
Oh.
Yeah.
You
it's
are?
over 100 years old. Yeah.
Okay. I assume it's been added on to a time or two.
3 times. Yeah.
3 times.
Yeah.
Okay. How about the barn? Because the picture I saw of that barn, that's a big barn.
The barn, they cut it up in sections and reconstructed it after they got it up there. Yeah.
Okay, put it back together.
Yeah.
Really.
It looked just like it did when it was down in the forest. So they did a good job.
Man. So who would have done that project? Your dad and?
My dad and a fellow by the name of Guy Groven he was a carpenter. So
okay.
He helped reconstruct it.
Yeah.
So when you said that the house was moved on timbers,
Mm-hmm.
you put it on like logs and skidded it the whole way?
No, it wasn't skidded.
Oh.
It was hauled on a truck. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Truck and trailer, I think. Yeah.
Okay. How big a house would that have been, or how big a building?
It was
size-wise.
Probably about 24 by 32 or something like that.
Okay.
Wasn't a big house.
Yeah. Well, that's still pretty
Yeah, a
good
big
size
house to move, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It was. Okay. Um, how about? Do you recall your parents talking about how they chose a new location to move to when you got the word you were going to move out of the forest? Um, did someone help them choose a place, or was that up to
Not that I
them?
know of. I really don't remember how that was done, but the land where we moved to it had just recently been burnt over, so it was fairly easy to open, and a lot of it just pick up the
Okay.
grubs and burnt over stuff.
All right.
I think that's one of the reasons why they located there. And then Hay Creek run right through the section that Dad had bought. Yeah.
Okay.
So there was water there.
Yeah. Do you remember or recall your parents talking about? I mean, this was a big project, the resettlement project. They moved, well, total, Brady, like,
Couple hundred families.
yeah, a couple hundred
Yeah.
people or families. What were your parents' feelings about that? Do you recall any discussion? Were they for it, against it?
I think that first they were against it because they were pretty well settled,
Right.
and it was a nice community. But it was a blessing in disguise, for sure. Because like you say, it was just subsistence living there.
Right.
And after they got out and got better land, most of them ended up being
Yeah.
pretty well off farmers, you know. So,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you recall any of who were some of your neighbors that might have done the same thing, moved out? Do you recall any names? Or local names? Are they still around? Or?
Well, Zediks, Chesneys, Abatoskis, Yeloshinskis, Snyders. Yeah, there's a number of them that we
Okay.
knew, yeah.
Yeah. Great. So you talked about what you missed. You really missed the wind in the pines, and anything else you recall about? I'm sure you were probably a hunter.
Well, at that time I wasn't.
Oh,
But I after we moved out of there, my dad was a trapper.
okay.
He made a pretty good income trapping wolves, and but he wasn't a hunter. He
Oh.
was a very poor shot because he always had problem with one eye, and it was his shooting eye. So we got up there, and there was a lot of deer around, and this was a year after we moved up. He gave 10 years old. He gave me the rifle, and he says he had a little alfalfa field. He says you go out and shoot a deer there. So I went out there and sat behind a stump and waited, and sure enough, the deer come out. There was about, I suppose, a dozen of them out there. So I picked out the biggest one and shot. I shot and he run off, and I went home.
Do you recall what kind of rifle it was?
Yeah, it was a 30-30, and I still have the gun.
Oh, no kidding.
I had it. It was a 30-30 with a long Hux. No, it wasn't a 30-30. It was 38-55.
Oh,
And after I got it, I had it changed into a 30-30. Had it cut down and made into a sporting gun, and I hunted with that for many years.
okay. Did you say it had an octagon barrel?
Yes, it
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty
It
common.
was the barrel was about. It seemed to me like it was about 8 feet long, but I don't think it was that long. It was heavy.
10 years old, your dad was a pretty trusting soul. Here's the rifle, son, go out and shoot us a deer. Yeah.
Well,
How about grouse hunting?
Rough grouse, we hunted them a lot. Yeah,
Wow,
there were
yeah.
a lot of them. In fact, when we lived down in the forest, me and my brother used to hunt them with a slingshot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.